Greetings and welcome to the second season of the Destination Goa Trance podcast, bringing in-depth interviews with artists, label people, organizers, from the golden age of the 90s to the modern era. My name is Simon Peter and I'm here with the one and only Tibus.
Nice! Let's talk about Goa Trance. In the second season, you can expect more episodes with classic artists, label owners and DJs. To kick off, we have a really special guest this time, Jan Müller of Extreme. Simon, when did you first hear Extreme?
I think I heard one of their classic tracks when I started listening to Goa Trance around the year 2000, but for sure the first time I saw them live was in 2006 at a Solar Eclipse Festival in Turkey. But after that I've seen them a couple of times again, playing their newer, more psy-techno sounding tunes, but also on more old school sets.
One of my best memories when they played 6-7 hours at ZNA, covering everything their projects included. I think they started at 11 and they played until 6-7 in the morning. It was such a trip.
Wow, it's a shame I couldn't be there. So for those not in the know, can you sum up their career so far?
Yes, sure. So Extreme is known for constant change. They started in 91 by Marcus Michael and Jan Müller. They created 2 Goa Trance albums, Trip to Transylvania, and we created Our Own Happiness. Both of them classics. You need to check them out if you haven't heard them yet. And they created one of the blueprint records for Psytrance called Radio, which was copied by many afterwards. Then they shifted into techno direction with their 4th album called Irritant. Their last artist album, We Interface, was released in 2005. Yet another change, now to more experimental electronic music, with vocals from Jan's wife Ariel and some utopistic cyberpunk lyrics. But no matter what style they were creating music in, they always did it in the highest quality. So without further ado, let's hear the interview with Jan Müller.
You guys just came out with compilation or a collection of old rare tracks called B-Sides and Rarities. How did this come together? We haven't heard much about Extreme for a long time. So how did this come together and what was the selection process like for this album?
Basically, this is a project Alex put together for us. Mm-hmm. And the idea, he's totally like guiding these things and put together also the tracks, like rare tracks he thought which are rare and put it together and compiled it. This is a project like from Alex for us, basically.
Yeah, he's your manager, basically, right?
He's managing us, and it's his idea. And we were sitting lately together to set up the cover a little bit. He's the main force in that project. And besides us making the tracks in the past, you know.
Yeah, I really love the track selection. There are a couple of tracks that I was hunting for a long time. And one of them is actually just a couple of months ago, I bought the Flying Rhino compilation, which contains the Vanishing Point track.
Yeah.
And that shows a really different side of Extreme. What do you think of that track? And did you create more in that style?
Sometimes we were sitting in the studios and having different vibes and just experimenting here and there. And this is one of those products, you know, this Vanishing Point. And yeah, I think that was a long time on somewhere on the disc until it was released, yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, with a really, really different vibe to what Extreme was known for.
Yeah.
I think you had like some chill out tracks here and there, like Relax Vortex and stuff, but it's also not a typical kind of chill out track either. So, yeah. One of my favorites on the list there, which is also was initially a bit of a surprise for me, is the X-Wave track, because I knew that California Sunshine was involved on that one, but I didn't know you guys cooperated on the track until I looked up, and then it totally made sense. If you hear the track, you are like, yeah, that sounds like an Extreme track. And if you look at compilation, when I was looking at it, it was like, okay, California Sunshine, that doesn't sound like them. But I think also late 90s, like 98 or something, when it originally came out on some compilations, and then it was a totally new sound. How did this collaboration came about with California Sunshine back then? Do you remember, or what was it like with them in the studio?
I mean, Miko was also a promoter and making a lot of parties too, you know. And besides, he was DJing and producing. He's making parties, like super busy guy, you know, and always in a good mood. And he invited us in the 90s to play on his parties often, and we slept in his place, you know, during the time we stayed in Tel Aviv. We became really close with him, like good friends. That's how it came together, you know. Like at one point, we were making music together and producing a track. Yeah, I tell you, it's like getting these things back in my head. I don't have such a good photographic memory, really. You know, like other people have this photographic memory and can remember so much details.
I read in an interview, I think it was in the introduction, that you and Marcus got together because you had some kind of computer issue. And the idea was that if you join forces, that's better than working separately. And is this true? And when did you guys actually meet? And when did you decide to create music together?
I think you wrote here 89. It must have been 88 even. Yeah, I kind of was known maybe by some people like as a computer geek, you know, fixing things. And his computer was broken, and then this one friend who knew I was a geek, hang out with him, told him then, hey, let's go to Jan, maybe he can fix it, you know. And then he came first time by, and we figured out I cannot fix it, it's fucked. But I had the same computer also. And then we decided to put our equipment together here in my place and meet each other here and make music. That's how it all started. Like a computer was broken, and then we used mine to have fun together. And it was actually hip hop in the beginning. Before it was techno, we did hip hop, like listening to all the 90s hip hop from America in those days. Try to do things like that, you know. Marcus was rapping and I was doing beats. He too, of course, we produced, and then for 2 years we were into that.
I would love to hear one of those tracks if you have.
I said, Marcus have a big collection at home there. I don't have things from that stuff here on my laptop to copy it down from, just to also get back into that and have a listen.
How was the Hamburg electronic music scene back then when you guys started?
Yeah, maybe hip hop. We started like there were 2 clubs around the Reeperbahn, you know, Reeperbahn, Red Light District in Hamburg. Maybe this is known, and there were all the cool clubs for this kind, for hip hop in those days, you know, in 88, 89. And yeah, we also met this, maybe, I don't know if you know the name, David Fascher. He was a world for DMC championship. He was winning this twice in London, like 88 and also 88, 89, I think. Because he was doing a hand spin on the record player and playing from the Jungle Brothers round and spinning on that whole thing with his whole body, you know. And then he won against all these super cool DJs like from London and New York. He won, was cool. And then his father was doing the Star Club here in Hamburg, where the Beatles once played, which were. Yeah, and it was also a music family, and we hang out with him making hip hop. We had one vinyl even once with David Fascher. We had the B side and here A side. I think that was our first vinyl even ever. It must have been 89. our first vinyl, like hip hop vinyl.
And you were already called X Dream at that time?
No. That was I think 90. There was 1990. We went to a club called Grünspan. It's in the Freiheit, also Reeperbahn district, St. Pauli, and there was a birthday party of this 3 years birthday party for this certain event, opera house it was called, and it was on a Thursday night. And I remember we went in there and it was packed. They played techno music there, and we never seen something like this. It was crazy. We really digging it, and that moment was for Marcus and me really like a switching point from that one music to the other music. And then we went into other clubs and discovered other kind of things in Hamburg about techno music.
So how did the name X Dream come up, and how did you come up with concept for this new band?
Yeah, it must have been around this time I'm just describing, where we went into this Grünspan club, when we start deciding to make techno, and then thinking about naming. If we had a name also in the hip hop days, and our artist names were Russian Rough. I think soon there's a question going in this direction. So this is already the answer now. And then we start thinking about a cool name for like making techno. First it was more techno, trance. We discovered a bit later. First we discovered techno music, 1990, really the hard stuff. And then some years later, I don't know, 1 year, 91, we discovered parties, was it 91 or maybe 92? There was a place called Waldheim, south of Hamburg, in the forest. It was an old hotel. And in that hotel, they made every month or 2 months a trance party. Yeah. It must have been 92. From like this was Spirit Zone beginning, kind of Antaro and all these freaks. They made these parties happen there in the forest. We discovered this like 92. Yeah. And then 90, I think 90, this year it was Marcus's idea. We're looking for names, and he popped up with this extreme thing. And I also loved it right away. Yeah, and so the name Extreme was born. I think it was 90, must have been 90. We start producing tracks then already, and we also 91. We hang out. Maybe the name Planet Ben is also Planet Ben.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it was we hang out with Ben a lot at those days, and made a club together there in the Reeperbahn area, like in a bar, or there was a bar, and there was behind the bar, there were some stairs downstairs in the cellar, and down the cellar, we had a club, some rooms, really dark, really big sound system. And Ben was mostly DJing, and it was a really techno time until we get to the point what I was describing before at the hotel then in that forest south of Hamburg, Spratze.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned Ben, because I think his sound is also very techno-based, psychedelic and trippy, but his old school tracks are also very much techno-based. So I can see the connection there.
Yeah, we were all friends from in the beginning. Hanging out a lot.
I don't remember. Do you ever make tracks together as well? Because he also started producing in the early 90s, I think.
Early, I don't know, when he 95, maybe 94 or 5, he produced. I think Ant Invasion was one of his first tracks. I check out the year. And this year, when he made Ant Invasion, maybe there was other things before with other musicians. In Hamburg he did before. I cannot put it together so much anymore. It's so long. There was also in community north of Hamburg where a lot of freaks lived, and Ben was inside there with some DJs, like some DJs, really known Goa DJs were living there even from the past.
How was your studio back in the day, in the really early 90s? Do you remember?
Yeah, Atari, and it was MIDI, and what we had a sampler, a ESP from Sonic, the 12-bit sampler. That's like we made like Children of the Last Generation. I remember things like that, and Fifth Dimension. I think this whole album was about this sampler, and we had a Roland D10, a Juno 106. I think there was a 303 already. We had a 303, maybe even two. One for sure. MS-50. I mean, like Transylvania Express, I don't know the MS-50 there, but the Juno, and I don't know if we had a Poly 800 was really early there. And a JX3P from Roland. And we had a Soundcar Spirit mixing desk. The LXP5 from Lexicon, a delay, like a little, I think this DP4 from Sonic, this we had really early to make effects. Remember this effect processors like with 4 in and out, DP4 from, not Sonic, from, I don't know the brand anymore. Kind of, this was like Transylvania Express, mostly like the equipment we had. Maybe here and there some more, I forgot now.
And did you also play live in the studio? We talked with artists, and Total Eclipse, I think also because Moses said that actually the tracks were live performances, because back then they didn't have automation. So one of them was sitting in front of the
like you had all running MIDI and other synthesizers. If you couldn't control it by MIDI, you had to go by hand and record it all at one go. And this is really like a really old school behavior in a way, like rock bands did, in the studio, and they have a mic and everybody's like standing in front of a stereo mic and doing the recording. And in a way, this is a little part which makes it similar,
Yeah, and I think the TB303 was even used in hip hop in the early days, and samplers obviously. But I guess when you switched to techno, you started collecting gear more in the style. So what kind of synths can produce that kind of sound? So you started to collect gear in the studio to achieve these kind of effects and synth sounds, right?
Right. In the hip hop days, I think the first thing we bought was this sampler, because you wanted loop, and you want to just record little bits out of from cool records, funk and soul records, and find cool loops and rap on them. That's so that sampler was really early on. I think this EPS from Sonic. But then later, and also in the hip hop days, we didn't think about so much synthesizer stuff. That's really true. Then when the electronic techno stuff came in, we really were about like having this sound and that sound. And every time you buy a new synthesizer, you get it like a creative boost, sound wise. And techno is about sound, and then you widen up your spectrum, having a new synth doing this and that.
Which one was Extreme's first EP? Because I couldn't actually find it. I know that it was one of...
Maybe Automatic Lover. The XMA Automatic Lover, but this was a remix we did. I think this was maybe one of the first things where the name Extreme appeared.
And what do you remember holding your first EP as Extreme in your hand?
If I would have known where it goes to, I would have been more exciting, I have to say. But it was just like the moment, we just cool. We were young, 20, maybe there was like 20, 91. There were 90 or 91, I don't know. Maybe 91. There we met the Tonner Records guys, and they also made parties in the basement there. Where they had the label, there was a parking lot in the basement, and there they made parties, and Georg Roll, the owner of Tunnel Records, and Andreas Roll. Actually, these two guys are the guys who started Evolution. If you remember this project, really early project from the 90s, a trance project more. I think they make one or two albums. I don't know anymore. Something like that. There was these two guys making also the Tunnel record label. Yeah, and at this parties they are doing, we met them and start talking. And talking about, we make music, and they're like, we're having this label, and then we had a meeting in their label space, and it was all super exciting.
Your early tracks tapped into different styles, so hard trance, go trance, breakbeat, but the majority of the tracks are already trance. So what did you guys like in the trance sound? What was the appeal in the trancey and not the techno or breakbeat?
Yeah, I think that the music had more layers, like than techno. This is more it's more orchestral than techno music. But I think in those days we really liked that, and also the culture, at that time, I think there was a more exciting parties around Hamburg, and to go to this whatever hotel I was talking about before, and Waldheim parties. Massive fun there. There was mega parties, and also then the first Woof part came in the 92, then whole like big huge digging hole for sand, I think did you know the pictures? There are pictures around on Facebook and the internet. This kind of place, there was our first festival, and it was all mega exciting because things like this didn't exist before, really, like that style. It was really the first kind of whatever. How it was, we know this didn't exist before, but so it was a really exciting moment because of that. Also,
you explained that you mostly went to club events in the beginning, and probably techno raves were also around at the time, but that sounds like it was totally different, right? Like the Woof parties and these early Goa parties were already different.
The early Goa parties had already had a touch like it is. They set like a big style, and then it stayed a bit like this, So it's and the techno scene was also like the techno scene is even afterwards, like they set up also for people starting techno afterwards, style and dress code. Even like in the trance scene, all this fractal and fluoro, it's still there, We started, it was all new when we went to these parties, 91. We never seen that before. Did anybody wear that? The first time, and then you go through the city and a freak pass by with a fractal leggings or whatever, haven't seen that before ever. Yeah, this whole lifestyle was also super cool.
So that's how the kind of psychedelic inspiration come, and you said, okay, now you need to change your style in music.
Yeah, that's actually before we had more like a techno influence, and after we went to this Waldheim parties and these parties Antaro did there, and Antaro Scotti and Axel and Sangeet, all these names we heard then, and we followed their DJ sets and parties a lot, And yeah, it was trance.
I think you created one of the or the very first video clip in this genre for the diss track. And what can you tell us about that video for it?
See, I think we did it ourselves. This one. This software we had, there were already programs, not like Final Cut Pro or Premiere, but really weird shit to make things happen. Old friend of mine, I think he had some video equipment, and with that also I don't know, there was a kind of a project with friends and friends and fun, and then with this low budget stuff we had, we made just something happen that we're really proud about. We didn't have a professional gear ever, really, you know, in the beginning.
I think even Viva TV showed it in.
Yeah, cool. Wow.
Trip to Transylvania, your first album, came out in 1994, and to me it seems more of a compilation of your best EP releases.
Before, yeah. We put all this together to an album. Also, I think we made different versions for some tracks. That you have a different version on the album of 1 or 2 tracks than on the EPs even. But basically, there was a whole compilation of all these EPs released before, of all these color EPs, you know, this whatever yellow one was 11, and we had a red one, a blue one.
And where did the title Trip to Transylvania come from?
Yeah, I mean, just like explaining it completely like the name is, you know. We had a trip to Transylvania during those days. Like trance music, tripping, and found that. And then finally, I don't know, 6-7 years ago, we went there to Transylvania. There was a festival. What was that festival again? Like maybe you know that from. It's not far from Budapest, closer than from my side. There's a festival in Romania this summer. With techno and trance. And there we went, and we were having good fun being first time in Transylvania. Then finally,
Who come up with that cover?
There was, I tell you what, there was pretty modern in those days. These effects to animate something on something. And I think if you look at it today, it's kind of really basic and I don't want to say cheap, you know, but in those days it was amazing that you can project like I think it was like this train on a round thing, you know. If I have it right in my head, it's like I think it was some Photoshop effects on those days, and it's like we were. I mean, Tunnel Records had a graphic engineer there in those days, like a girl. She made all the covers, and she made this too. And yeah, and we agree all to do this. Like when we hang out there at her computer, I remember.
How did the writing process look like in the studio? Did you guys have like musical training, and did you start to compose like a trained musician, or was it like just more like jamming and experimenting?
I played piano as a teenager for 5 years to understand harmonics a little bit, you know. But Marcus, for example, I don't know if you know the theoretic things, but he also understands harmonics, you know, like it's the talent kind of to understand those things. I don't need to learn it. You remember Pet Shop Boys, is one band from the 80s. I think not one of them can write a note, and they made a lot of #1 hits in the charts. We basically went more into sound, you know, than notes in techno.
Which is your favorite track from the album, and why?
Children of the Last Generation. I really love that. Because, yeah, it's like the atmosphere of this track. It's like cool, the bass, and how it's like kind of a bit epic for those days. Cool track. I think it was released much earlier, yeah, 93. The vinyl a year before that album, or 90. I think we made it 92, and it came out 93.
You already toured internationally this time, because the Fifth Dimension is from Paris.
Yeah, we had a gig, our first international gig in Paris. That was 92, 93 or 2. I don't know. Cannot put it together anymore. It was 2 or 3, one of those two. And we made a version for that, a special version for that gig.
And how were your first parties where you played as a live act? Do you remember?
Yeah, that I remember. There was outside, and it was on a lake, and the stage they had on the one side of the lake, and the dance floor on the other side of the lake. And I remember it was really cool light decoration, and we went there with Evolution in those days. They also had it with us together, the live show, and it was the first time we went international. It was in Paris. I think it was after we played in Frankfurt at the festival. Cosmic Trigger was the name, and the guys from the Patrick Rognon, he's from FG Radio. I don't know if you know FG Radio. There was a really famous radio station in Paris during all over the 90s. And he was at the Cosmic Trigger party and saw us there playing, and that's how it came together that the Freaks from Paris invited us to play there. And then there was our first gig in Paris, and actually in the 90s we played in Paris a lot of times. Like Gaia for quite a while, a lot of Gaia festivals in a row, and TBE for TBE, Trans-Body Express, for those guys we played, and yeah. And some dudes I forgot. Like, yeah, but a lot in Paris. But that was our first international gig too in Paris. Like, must have been 90, maybe really the beginning, 93.
How was the live set?
Yeah, in the beginning, we just put a lot of gear in our car and set it up and played like full live there with all the gear for some years. I think when hard disk recording popped up, I had a G3. I think it was 94 or something, or 5. And then Imagic had a card with 8 outputs. I don't know if you remember this card, for a PCI card for a computer. Yeah, and we had this in the computer, and then I built a flight case around the G3 from Macintosh, that we had a G3 in a box. That we had for probably 10 years. Wow, that was a good concept. But in the beginning, we came with a lot of gear.
It was a bit more difficult to set up back then, but people were doing live acts like that in the days, because everybody who started doing music in the 90s tells the same, that was the way you had to bring out the gear to do live music.
I mean, even if you listen to some recordings, how different they sound, of today, like some artists, when you listen to this, they made some really strange recordings, I have to say. And when people were dancing and flipping out to that, I remember it didn't even matter. Like, it was all new. People were not even educated in what's a killer bass drum, or just anything was right, no?
Did you already have like an arrangement back then, that maybe one of you is doing the mixing live, somebody is dealing with the sequencer? Did you have like these roles, how you would do the live act?
Right. There was, Marcus was always on the mixing desk, and I did always the synthesizer kind of direction. Sometimes we switched, but mostly that.
Live Fast Die Young is dedicated to BH. Who is he or she?
Yeah, that's an old friend of us who died at the age of 21, really young. Yeah, so we dedicated to Björn, a friend of ours from our town here where we're living. So we dedicated this track, which the Fast Die Young, and yeah, explains it kind of,
And you also had a project called Pollinator around this time. What can you tell about the EP you released with Alex von Ponder?
Right, there was this Alex. How it came to that? Yeah, we met Axel at a lot of parties. He was DJing, hang out with him, call him. It just became kind of friends, and because he's also like really deep into music, a DJ, decided to hang out for a good studio time and try to create something. And that Pollinator project came out of it, like some versions of this clone tracks and stuff. Yeah.
In 97, you released the Trip to Transylvania in the Mix, which has a different artwork and slightly changed track list and mix in a mix format. Was this your idea, or it happened because the original pressing were sold out?
I think the pressing sold out. I think it was Tunnel Records releasing it, yeah, and that did a new cover, and yeah, to just make them available, make the stuff available, have a product to sell, yeah, things like that.
Your next album, We Created Our Own Happiness, which is one of the classics of the Goa trance genre and probably one of the best electronic music albums out there. Before this release, you already had a couple of EPs, but how did you prepare for this album? How did your working process change, if it has?
I mean, it was an evolution, and for us too, like loving this music and this culture more and more. I don't know. And then this album happened. It was a really cool time doing, I don't know, really cool parties, I remember, and the really like mega vibe in those days. I was young, Marcus was young, and we want to do exciting things. So we created exciting things somehow.
The record has a really nice flow, so the tracks are cohesive, they go from one to each other really nice, and it really works as a journey. How conscious were you with the structure of the album?
I don't think so much that we created one track to the other track to make the other track happen after. There was more like the vibe during this year was really similar. So we made this just every track is having a vibe from us during this time, and that's why they're all fitting together. And also we had always the idea to make it not sound like always the same, to have like always a new kind of thing, melody, or having a similarity in our extreme sound, but the ideas of the themes really like to do always different things, and then we put it like this together, and it's luckily a good flow and a good album.
And where did the title and the title track, the Our Own Happiness track, how did that come about, and why did the title became also We Created Our Own Happiness? How did you find the sample?
Right, Marcus did once a recording from the TV, like one documentary where these people were talking like this about like we create our own happiness and blah blah blah, and even more topics we used in other tracks. I think Telegram and Radio, I don't know, Radio 2, and all these samples come from one of those weird shows the TV Marcus collected once, and it's basically from him, his collection. There was also the sample We Created Our Own Happiness. That's what we do. Just picked it, put it in a track, and it grew like that.
Was it some kind of a documentary on like hippies or something like that?
Not hippies, I think. I think it was more like a psychiatry thing, Like people need to be mentally healed and stuff. Yeah.
And who came up with the zebra for the artwork? And how does that symbolize for you the album?
From Arne, from Extrawelt, actually did this with Marco. Arne and Marco were doing MIDI miliz in the past with, I think also, I don't know if Vajan was also there. At one point, Vajan popped up, and now also, Extrawelt today, Vajan and Arno are doing the Extrawelt thing, really exciting and successful. And yeah, that cover was made by Arne. He made put some ideas together. One of them was a zebra, and we really liked that and picked that. And then he keep on making an inlay and all the things what you need to for all the album, for vinyl and for all these formats.
And one of my favorite tracks is Do You Believe? What can you tell us about that track?
Ooh. Yeah, man, do you believe? Yeah. What was the thought, the idea about that? It's just like 3 words. Maybe you just want to put something mystic. It's, I don't know, sounding cool. Do you believe?
But was it one of you recording actually the sample through the microphone, or?
Yeah, that was Marcus. This is Marcus's voice. And we recorded that even, yeah. But I don't know how we came up with that actually. Do you believe? Maybe there was even more and then we just left that in, or...
And which one is your favorite track and why from the album?
From the Happiness album. Yeah, Happiness. It's a really good put together thing, like the whole flow and also the themes, really good authentic melodies and atmospheres putting after each other. I really love playing it, even like when we have a live show, like people are expecting that and then you play it. It's always a good moment.
Yeah, I think it holds up very well still today. There are some nice remixes of it, but I think the original is still the best. Also, I think you had like a more acidic version of it, right?
I think 2 versions, one with a funky bass and one with a just steady bass sound. The bass was a 303 actually. Steady or what? Just right, the steady bass, and the other bass I think that was made with a Juno 106, or maybe we had a microwave there already. And at one point we bought a microwave one, this blue machine, with one button, and there's almost all basses we did with this machine. And 303, we did a lot of basses too.
You started your collaboration with Spiralians, or it was Spiralkinda back then, for the track Relaxed Vortex. How do you remember collaborating with those guys over the years?
We were friends for years already with those dudes, hanging out in Arne's place, at home. And the weekend before, we just jumping in the car and going to Hamburg for a party. At one point, we are just like, let's make music together, Like, I think they were DJing, Arne. I don't know. They have tons of... Arne had always tons of records at home. I bought everything too, I remember. And they were DJing too, a little bit. Tried to get along with DJing in the beginning. And then because they were so deep into music, like us, and all the parties, just like, let's hang out in the studio and do something. And then Relax Vortex happened.
All right, let's move to Radio, which is also a classic. It's one of the first, let's say, real psytrance releases, where the melodies are less apparent and more the psychedelic sounds are in the spotlight. And I think it was ahead of its time. Before the album, he released the Frog EP, which already showcased this direction. But what were you guys influenced by, or what was your motivation to go into this direction for this album?
I don't know. It's just happened. Try to figure out. I mean, we start liking, like, we have a lot of tracks with a 16 bass, like Radio, Telegram, made by Microwave one. It was like it was called Pencil Bass. I remember the name. I think it's a known preset, involved in that way, the style. Just want to say, like, by then we were already like 5 years in that music direction in a creative way. And yeah, it was maybe for sure like the adventure of looking for a new sound, And we achieved it that way. And then we found that new label in England, had a platform like Massive. That was like going ahead really good. That was really good days. There was Blue Room, I think the release was 796 flavor of the album. Yeah. It was really good. Good album.
Really good. Do the frog croaks came from synths or it's a sample?
I think it's a sample, but it's like I think it was a sample like from library, you know. The rumor came up that we recorded it in the jungle, you know, here and there really, and people asking us and tons of video. And in the end, it came from the jungle. we start going with that, with their fantasies, you know, like whatever, don't destroy the nice fantasies of the people. So we went in the jungle and found a frog there. But don't tell anybody. I think it was from a sample CD or something like that. Or maybe even the psychiatry. I don't know.
You already mentioned some collaboration with other people, and both of you started around this time to have like side projects, like you mentioned MIDI Millits and the Extrovert guys and Spiral kinda, or Spiralians. And then Marcus was also working on the Children of Paradise project.
No, it was Jan.
So, and then also the Delta. So
Marcus was the Delta. With Noosphere, the guys from Noosphere and Marcus were putting the first Delta stuff together.
And how do those projects affect Extreme? What do you think?
The Delta
Both
or
of
Cop?
them. Both of them.
Both, yeah. It was end of 90s now, like 97 to 2000 the time. Oh no, we also made Extreme tracks. Then I don't know if it affected. Maybe we spent time then in other directions and we had less extreme output then, you know, because you're doing a little bit this and that other things. You know, in the end, I also made this band music, this organic noise project, and then Corp and Extreme and Delta. Marcus helped the Newsfest guys a lot to in their productions too. I remember. Yeah, I mean, let's say in this way it had an influence time-wise, you know, or things are splitting. But every project for itself had a different sound too in its way, you know. And so for it's right of existence because of that, you know.
And why did you choose Radio as a title for this record?
Yeah, we had this track Radio, we had this track Telegram, we had this idea of this kind of transmission thing, you know, technology. I think we were always also a bit technology driven, name wise a bit. Like in the last album of Extreme, this is a lot of technology driven things, you know. So we were always a little bit having the ideas about buttons and knobs and radios and transmission and whatever.
So was it like you created the first track and you said like, okay, let's have this radio theme going through the whole album and have this radio static noise at the end of each track? So did this concept came out of the first track?
Yeah. Then they make the whole thing a radio. Like I think it was like we're heading all these tracks together and hang out at the Blue Room label. I think we decide already that we call the album Radio. Simon came up with this cover, you know, make it also look like a radio, make it a radio. And
which is your favorite from this record?
Yeah, favorite is I like Psycho Machine. It's a cool track, man. Psycho Machine, maybe. Also, the radio itself, I love, you know. We have even that Dritte Raum remix from Radio, which is a killer remix he did once. You know the Dritte Raum remix from Radio? Yeah. It's a killer one. Yeah, but I think this two, Radio and Psycho Machine. I don't know which one I like better. One of them.
After a couple of years, practically the style that you were playing on radio was the norm in Psytrance. How did you guys feel about that? That everybody was suddenly doing this style of music?
I think it was also a change of sound in the middle of the 90s because of technology popping up. People were using, and we start using like certain things also the first time and setting up a certain sound, and a lot of people using these instruments after and having artist recording all these features to do that. And how I feel about that, it's like that we like, maybe we were touching it the first time, maybe it's exciting in a way. That's that kind of, we are in the beginning of sound, like I'm kind of proud about it a little bit.
I think it was actually a blueprint for a lot of other artists later.
Yeah, a lot of artists telling me even, like the inspiration, we gave them. Lots of artists.
Yeah, you can hear it, I think.
What an honor, also what an honor to hear that from everybody. Like, wow, don't know what to say. Thank you.
In the same year as Radio, you released the Erection remix, which is an absolute dance floor classic. How did you find the original, or how did that track came together?
Well, we know Peter Huber, who made the track with a friend of him in those days. And he was like working for the Groove magazine, doing articles. And also in those days, where we start meeting him, and then he did the Dope Records, this one label. He did a long time, Dope Records and High Society. And also he did this. And we always loved this track. Always loved to hear this track. When there was a party and kind of for a long time, we were talking about, let's make a remix from that track. And at one point, we just did it just like that, sitting a week in the studio, and the result was out here. We asked Peter Huber for the samples, and then he gave us all the samples related to this track, and this is samples and the Stone thing.
Peter also appears on your next album, right? I think he's in Peter's Hoover.
Peter's Hoover. It said Peter, right? Same person.
Before Irritant, you released Children of Paradise, the only album, Urban Alien. How did you guys come together for that project? And what do you think of the album today?
I think I was hanging out in Paris during those days, like from 97 to 2000. Like, I had a girlfriend there. And there was this dude called Ganguru. They had a studio there and a lot of synthesizers. And I think this was this dude, I don't know, Mad Stuff. I don't know if you know the name Mad Stuff. He's hanging out in Goa a lot now. Everybody knows him there. And he was connecting me to this Gangaroos guys, Willie, Pierre, and Serge. Willie, Pierre, and Phil. Sorry, Phil, Pierre, and Willie. Yeah. And from the Gangaroo, they're also having a lot of gear there. And then we just meet a lot of times for maybe 2 years. In these 2 years, we made all these tracks, which became an album then. And during those time, we were already at Blue Room, so I think that we had even one track on Blue Room released, I remember, on a vinyl.
Yeah, Alienation, I think.
Yeah, right. And then the album came out on Novatech.
So after Radio, you again had a little bit of a change on the next album with Irritant, and it's more like darker techno-y, psy-techno sound. Is this the next step in the evolution? Did you start experimenting with new gear or new techniques?
No, we had a lot of gear then, and went into this. We had like more kind of techno techno feeling in those days, you know. Like for us, trance was already like we were 7 years in trance music, like really deep, and it's like we try to experiment with more harder sounds during those days, distortion and more longer progressive arranges, you know. And music became like this a lot, you know, after 2005. If you listen to minimal and like there was a really, and I think it's also like a lot of people from the trance scene went into this minimal techno scene here in Germany at least, which was changing it a little bit, you know. Like, and if you listen to techno or whatever, how it's called, you know, how it's called, Boris Brescher calling his music, for example, now minimal high tech, or what did he say? I forgot. Minimal high tech, or I don't know, something he said. And it's really trancy basically today also. Yeah, it's kind of like, I think a lot of things merge together, you know. Also from the trance scene and from the techno scene, and yeah, and in those days, the Irritant album, we were into techno and more sounds, more hard sounds, things on basic rhythms, basic things, and not so much layering anymore. Yeah.
That was really, I think, inspirational for many people. I think you were again a little bit ahead of the times, or ahead of the scene with this sound. Was any inspiration there? Did you just go back to your techno roots and started looking for inspiration in that kind of music? Or was it really just like you got bored with the trance sound and that's somehow you started the experiments in this techno style?
That was our techno watch in our brain. I don't know, zeitgeist, or so observing everything and seeing other movements and try to deliver things for this kind of other movement. Like I think around 2000, a lot of things happened, like in electronic music. There was a big shift, and we were also feeling this, you know.
To me, Irritant is still a really unique album, sound-wise. Maybe the two Spiralians and maybe the Delta second album is a bit close to this sound, but nothing else in the world. And I think it's really, really unique. If you listen to that album today, what do you think of that sound?
It's a bit more simple, you know, than the other stuff we did before and after, even music-wise, you know. We went a bit more into sound and distortion and different things and the techno vibe. You know, the album after sounds became a bit softer again, you know, and more round. Also a bit more complexity again, melodic wise, you know. Yeah, I don't know, just like, what's the zeitgeist, you know, having not too much, less layering and not too much melodic things. Try to don't touch the harmonies too much.
And how did you work in the studio with Marcus? So did you have roles? One of them used to work on the rhythms, the other one on the melodies, or how did you guys collaborate?
We did both. Let's say the 90s, where we probably worked the most together. Everybody did all, you know. Marcus had the same knowledge about controlling the whole thing than me. Other way, vis-a-vis. Well, it's like one is sitting and the other one is clicking, you know. Or maybe one is spinning on the machine a little bit, but yeah, well, you spend a lot of time together. Sometimes somebody is gone and I was sitting alone in the studio, and the other way around, and then we came together after some days and listened to the progress. A lot of work, like, so we mostly did a track for it took a month always to make a track, you know, with this old MIDI stuff to make it precise and accurate. And not every track is same accurate, all the other tracks, you know. I think Or I think the radio album was a really precise album. Also, Happiness. This album, there's a lot of precision in the in every album of us. When the Irritant is really like an outstanding product of us. Yeah, but when maybe we were thinking about more sound and noise and and like you say, things were evolving off this direction during those days, and then you had minimal techno, even more minimal, more progressive than what we did. Yeah.
And where did the title Irritant came from? Did you think that it would irritate the listeners?
Yeah, I mean, we came from the trance scene. I know that people have expectations, and then we tried to go to spiritual with this, and they couldn't get like really warm with this. They really liked it, but I think that more like that just didn't fit to their sound really. How spiritual wanted to sound like, And then we went to Novatech. I think that's that one. Because they were open for it and happy. Yeah, with Alexander Ligovsky, he was managing during those days. Good guy, I remember. It was good fun working with those dudes.
What do you think? What is in the bottle on the cover?
Something Irritant for sure, man. I actually made this cover. I made. Yeah. I had this idea, and then nobody could do it, and then I get some animation software out, and I don't know if it's Cinema 4D or something. I made it with Cinema 4D, put it together in those days, in the 90s. Yeah, 98, whatever it was released that year before I did this cover.
I guess back then, and maybe still today, you were working mostly with hardware, not like on the computer, like in software, maybe sequencing, but most of the sounds came from outboard gear, right, and synthesizers, and this was mostly the process still on this album, right?
Right. Actually, there's an interesting thing I have to say. We had a laptop during those days, and the intercopier stimulator we did only on the laptop. It was maybe one of the first tracks we did like completely computer-like. What's normal today of all these plugins, and I think it's made 97, maybe, yeah. So we did 97 track completely on a laptop, and it was in Simon Harris, the label manager of Blue Room, flat. I think we did it with him together there, hanging out and doing intercopier stimulator for some nights, and later mixing it at home, in the studio and putting it proper together. But it was fully running on a laptop, and was an experience for us. Hanging out there, having no studio, just a laptop, and having fun, and this cool track pop up.
On Irritant, you had a collaboration with Atmos called No Process. Is this a pun to his classic Only Process track?
might be. I think we had a lot of fun with him, and it is. You have to ask him about. Man, there was. I can imagine. You're not even far from the answer.
And if you have to name a favorite from this album, what would be your favorite track from The Irritant?
I think I like that Thorazine. Irritant is also cool.
Yeah, those are really banging techno tracks. And then with the next album, V Interface, you again change a little bit in style, although you can say it's more like a logical evolution. So you already had trance, you already had techno, and then this more cyber element comes in with V Interface. It's more EBM kind of style even. How did this concept come about for this new album?
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about all the tracks where we had vocals inside, but mostly all these ideas came from Ariel. Yeah, she's writing a lot of poetry, like as a hobby, then she had this topic about all this technology kind of things. She also was researching like a lot, like Thomas Mann from MIT, who was into this transhumanism, and you can hear it in the first, breath engine, indestructible heart, like thinking about the human is transforming into like a machine and living it like Matrix kind of vision, Yeah, and the interface too, like monitoring devices, know where you go, mass media, total control. It's all her words, and she had much more words and much more things. And let's say Marcus and me, we recorded a lot of like from area, like whatever she wrote down, and cut like these things together, what you hear, and edited it the way, like how it sounded like. It's like more spoken singing mix,
So did it all started when she started presenting her like poetry to you, and was it like, yeah, let's make music to this and let's create a whole album from this, or?
Yeah, I mean, maybe in those days, like we were also start being interesting in working with vocals in general, like the whole time you work without vocals, having just a sample from a psychiatry movie, blah blah blah, and all those things. Maybe at that point we start thinking, let's work with vocals, and Ariel is writing all these cool words, all like we recorded her and discover her voice, like the sound of her voice is we really love that, and it went really quick then together that we had cool ideas for this kind of thing which we put together then, like I think Quantum Lab. What was one of the first things we did? Like maybe Quantum Lab was the first track we did with Ariel.
Yeah, and some of the lyrics are really almost like prophetic, because if you listen to the album, it's like early 2000s, you still hear like these modem blips and these sounds that people who were surfing the net back in the day could recognize, but kids these days wouldn't know about it. But now the kind of surveillance and mass media, these kind of things became like a reality. So
totally. Yeah, but humans are like this, Why are they doing it? Because they can do it. And because it's like, figure out somebody can do it, they will do it. It's kind of scary that humans are like that. We had been in this topic also. It's like you hanging out in the evening, having a smoke and drink whatever in a bar, and talking about maybe topics like this, having a philosophic hour, with your friends. How the future could be. I believe even today there's a lot of content that we could think of, like how it will be in 10 years from now. Like if I see how crazy things are evolving, and you have censoring and whatever had happened here politically, like the last week was so exciting. You don't need to go in the cinema. And of Tom Cruise, he's 10 times more boring than what I've seen the last week in the TV here in Germany. The whole politic landscape is like shaking, and then you have this information things, and everybody, it's about truth, and we're also talking about truth is hidden, blah blah
knowledge
blah,
forbidden, yeah.
and it's about that, This information is disinformation, It's all disinformation and blah. We have it coming here. We like in those days, we have all these gadgets, social networks are start to be there. I think there was, before Facebook, you had this other thing, MySpace or something like this.
Even though some tracks have vocals, but others do not, still they have a similar mood or cohesive atmosphere on the album. How did you achieve that?
I think it's a zeitgeist answer. This is like the vibe of those days. Even I cannot do it today like I did it in the past. If I go in the studio, I don't know. It's a moment and it's a place where you are and the mood and I don't know. And it was like the mood of those days, like the thoughts we have and the sound we like to hear comes all together like this. Yeah, and it was also really different than Irritant, We get into this other thing again, afterwards.
I think it was pretty unusual at that time that the members are on the cover. Whose idea was that?
Yeah, that was Marcus pop up. He popped up as he found a similar picture. And he really loved that set, how these people are sitting there and interacting, and he set up the whole picture like that and put us inside, like for real.
And it was also a bit unusual, I think, at the time how you presented the album, because you went on stage with Arya singing. She was dressed up, I remember, and then people were like, "What is this?" In some parties, when like maybe there was one DJ playing or maybe there was one live act, it was unusual a little bit, and also the music was a little bit different. So again, I think you were kind of ahead of the times, because not many people were doing live acts like that back in the day, I think.
In our scene, at least, I mean, yeah. On a bigger commercial scale, there's a lot of electronic artists, with vocals. But and our scene, yeah, and our live shows were like 2/3 the old stuff, and then 1/3 we did with Ariel then on stage, so it was still like the old thing mixed up. And and I think the sounds and you can dance to it. It's all between 130, 140. We made we made this music also to dance to, We always love to dance, Marcus and me. And Marcus was once a really good break dancer when we did hip hop too. Yeah. And I think he fucked his knee a little bit. He had a knee problem after that from all these movements.
Which is your favorite track from this album?
Somewhere in between Quantum Lab and the first. Maybe the first, because of the lyrics. I like this really futuristic thing. Like beyond interface, Interface is still like kind of now, and we are the first. What happened there, it's like really far in the future. But actually, the line describes also like the first. What we thought is, well, the days we are living in. Also, Marcus, me, and Ari, we hung out in the past without cell phone, and I cannot imagine anymore how we met each other and whatever, today. But it's a complete different age, and from that old age, we are the last, and then a new thing is starting, and there we are the first, and that's the idea of the title, and the picture behind, and then from that point on, the lyrics and the story goes really far beyond future, like beyond human,
Yeah, and you released also a remix album, or the Interface the Mixes, 2 years later. What was the idea behind this record, and what do you think were the strongest tracks on that one?
What was I cannot remember what I have to put it together now, but I think we made a lot of mixes from this track, and then we put this together afterwards to release something for the fans and stuff. It's kind of like from our production, really like one of the last things, I think that there's March 2, there's one record, and Building Number 7. I don't know if this is also released, one from Alex or somebody released it in the end, But this Extreme Wise, Marcus did a track years ago for Extreme. I forgot the title. He did also with Marco from Sun Project.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
After the Interface album, that we hadn't had so much work anymore together. I went a bit in another business, work-wise, spent my energy, my let's say work power energy into another direction. Marcus is still 100% into music. He's doing now the most gigs. If there are gigs, he mostly is doing it because he needs to live from it, And
you and Aria later continued in a similar but less dark project, the Prime Suspect one.
And I think you even released a couple of tracks like 2-3 years ago or 1 year ago. I can't remember. So what's up with that project today?
There's even a whole album, We released a whole album on Nachtstrom. Yeah, it's a dude from Tübingen. And that was something we produced between 2000 and 2000. I produced this area 2003 or 4. And it took a while then until we had a release. Or even before, when I started producing tracks for that, I think around 2000. There was music which was in this Interface time also produced.
But yeah, you released Synthetic Love, I think, a couple of years ago. Is that project still on? Do you still create music for it?
No, I haven't. I haven't created so much music. I have I put my studio last year together, and when everything is working now, because my son, he's studying music now. He's on the piano. He's studying piano, and asked me if he can if I can show him and then can do something together. For that purpose, I'm just putting everything together again. And yeah, now it's everything working. I have a room at home that everything is standing there. He can access it, but he's really busy with his piano, taking a lot of time. And sometimes when I'm in the mood, I have a little room to play around. Maybe if I'm lucky, the track pops up. But it's a lot of work to make a good track, Spend my time now at a job a lot,
So looking back on your career with so many albums, is there a track that you are most proud of, or is there maybe a track that you don't like that much anymore?
I mean, the vocal tracks are really because they have cool message, It's because it's like a mental thing too, a mental element in those tracks, and a really strong one. I think all of us are really proud about these productions. And let's say before or without vocals, the albums I like a lot from the 90s were the happiness and radio. Every album was brilliant in a way. The Transylvania Express, you can hear that we are at the beginning, and the whole times were really fresh. Everybody was just there was a stage where you couldn't do anything wrong because nothing exists before, Really funny phenomenon. You do something and it's killer because it never happened before in any way, 91, 92, everything you did was new because nothing exists before. It was really cool. I think the first years in techno and producing there was really cool and interesting because of that fact, Nobody know how it should be, I don't know. It was a really free time idea-wise, And you were really following sound, Every time an artist came up with a record and somehow a louder kick, or Marcus and me, we were listening really different to music probably than people who are on the dance floor normally dancing. In those days, we were listening to every kind of bit of it and putting it apart, and because it was so interesting, and to figure out how other people are doing it, and everything was new, A lot of things people haven't heard ever before happened on those days. It was a pleasure to have this experience, I have to say. Gift.
There was an awesome remix compilation like 6-7 years ago. Two CD remix of Extreme remixes. Which is your favorite?
To say which one I like the best, that are all killer, you know. I like this whole. I'm really like honored from all these artists. Everybody's spending time and picking a track and making a track, and yeah, but it's also a project Alex from Boschke put together. That was his initial idea, you know, and then he asked everybody, and he put he's the soul of this project. Yeah, which one I like? I think I like them. I like to say now I love them all, you know, to honor all the art. I don't want to put some verse or something. I like them all. I'm so honored by that production and by that project from all the artists in that scene. It was kind of like you would say the German Ritterschlag or something. Well, you know, we knifed, you know, when you become a knife in England from the Queen or something. All these great artists are making a remix, and just because of the Extreme story, that was a great feeling, a great honor.
Yeah, and you also had your own label, Gravity Plus, right? What is the label doing these days? Are there still new releases planned on there?
Alex is managing the whole thing completely now. Yeah, there's everything which is connected to us. It's probably Gravity Plus. Maybe I don't know. Maybe Alex is doing other stuff on it now. I don't know actually, but he's managing the whole thing. And it's the idea which is beginning 2000. We came up with the name. I built the internet boom. I built even myself an internet page where we sold digital tracks, you know. Like it was 2004, 3 or 4, something like this. For a while, don't know why this why this thing went down again, but I don't know, maybe too much work or something.
You were there from the beginning. How do you see the psytrance scene nowadays?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I'm when I go to a festival party, I go there as a 54-year-old person now, you know, like that's like that. It's a really young music all the time through. I have to say, it's a really young audience in psytrance. Yeah, it's like I think in techno the people are on average a bit older often. I find also in Hamburg when I go to parties, you find that the people in my age more, if you go in the techno direction or than trance. I find all the way through the audience is really young. Yeah, now when you're like 54 years old, now it's like, yeah, it's beautiful to see that people love that stuff still. But yeah, it's not not my. Yeah, if I go alone to a party like this, there are not too much people I know anymore. You know, it's also a social experience. In the past, in the 90s, so much friends, all same age. This is not like this anymore.
If you think about how parties were organized, how many people were there, how did they interact back in the day, and versus what you can see today, how do you see the change? Is it a more positive change? Do you think the vibes are better these days, or what is the main difference?
I think in these days, I mean, for me, I think to find places with really cool vibes, I have to go further now. I have to go to Ozora. All these festivals I really love. They're massive. In the past, I had the impression that they were more closer, but also smaller, you know. I was here between Hamburg and Berlin. There were all these festivals, trance festivals in the 90s. It's really close. There was no Ozora or Boom. I think the fusion was starting also 96 or 7. Was a bit another concept then, you know, than trance. And yeah, but it was all really close. And today you still have fusion here, but it's almost more techno festivals here in Germany, which are pretty cool. We have still the Woof, but I think I don't know. I don't want to. I'm sure a lot of people go there and enjoy. I would have loved if Antaro still would have done it and they would have still have this spirit. I think they're a bit conservative maybe, but things are moving, changing, going ahead. It's like it is. But yeah, and I think the really good festivals for me are really far to go now, like Zora, ZNA, Boom, they're all in the south. And here, I mean, Antares, I think there's still a really good festival in Germany where I would like to go. Yeah. Or here in Hamburg, there's a club called Juice Club, where it's like a lot of things happen here. Maybe, I don't know if you know this dudes of Silence from Ollie. This is still something happen here in Hamburg regular, but festival-wise or party-wise, it became smaller here and bigger somewhere further away, like I say, or Zora. And things are developing into, it's I think, a holiday culture. You make holiday there for 2 weeks and then you make a whole experience out of it, and then we fly to Portugal and we fly around the whole summer from festival to festival. That's what it became a bit.
There was an old documentary, the Karahana movie, Drugless Festival, where you played like in 97 or something. It was an old documentary about that Psytrance festival. And there was a short interview with you guys where you said that the Psytrance scene is a lot better than, let's say, rock concerts, because people are like having a different vibe and people are not aggressive, they are not drinking and stuff. But nowadays we have these huge festivals in some places that you also mentioned, which started to look a little bit like rock concerts. So how do you think, is it still the kind of underground spirit that the scene had back in the day, or do you think this is a good evolution, or how do you like these kind of festivals that we have nowadays?
Yeah, and I think this is in the past, the thing that made it really sweet was this underground thing, and then it was really little. Rock and roll was really commercial, like already, and huge, and I mean, the same thing happened now then to all the electronic music. Over it became massive commercial. It kind of became the same where it had been in the rock and roll then in the 90s, where they're ending up having. Yeah, I like the vibe at the trance scene. That was really a peaceful thing, Was supposed like what Dr. Motte, like Friede, Freude, Eierkuchen, no? For Love Parade, the motto. It's like this love parade thing and everybody peaceful and just party and dance. That was the zeitgeist in the 90s. It was a really nice time, I tell you. Really, nobody was thinking. I was absolutely non-political. And after 9/11, I became political. This was for me also like a turning point of being a political human. And before I was non-political completely. And our album is a bit political, like the interface, in a way. You start thinking about life and things after the world was changing.
And that was our interview with Jan Müller from Extreme. We hope you enjoyed it. Extra thanks to Alex from Boschke Beats for his help with arranging the occasion. We will be back soon with another Goa Trance act as our guest on the next episode. Stay tuned.
Thanks for listening, people. If you enjoyed this podcast, hit the like button and be sure to subscribe. If you have any ideas, questions, leave a comment or message us on Facebook. Cheers.